Let me give you a little context where I was when weeks 26 and 27 rolled around. It was the start of a new year. I had just celebrated a birthday and taken a break from counting words for this Million Words project. I had reached the halfway point and was ahead of pace to meet that goal. On January 1st, I started my morning pages journaling session by writing this. Off we go into another year. 50 new years have started since I got here, and I am pretty sure that 50 is more than half of my allotment. It's not something I want to bemoan or belabor. I believe a constant focus on how old you are is a path to premature aging and psychologically induced decline. But at the same time, I don't want to pretend my productive and contributory years are endless. So here we go, into a new year and a new week and another new phase with the intent of progressing even more. Not at the expense of balance and enjoyment, but with renewed focus and vision and a refreshed perspective. I was ready to follow a specific and intentional path toward reassessment that would give me this renewed focus and fresh perspective. But I was about to find out, in the words of Robert Burns, and later adapted in a song by Randy Stonehill, that all the clever plans of mice and of men blow away like a child's balloon. Stick around, and I'll tell you what happened. Welcome to the Million Words Project. I'm your host, Garrett Sheridan White. 27 weeks ago, I set a goal to write 1 million new words in 1 year. In this video series, I chronicle the ups and downs of that year-long challenge as a way to help me make the most of this learning experience, and hopefully share something helpful with you along the way. I'm positive that doing these videos helps me learn more about myself, my creative process, and life in general, and I hope you find a little nugget here or there to help inspire or encourage you to tackle a big project you've always wanted to do but never quite gotten around to completing. Let's start with this week's update. I'm going to keep the update short this week because the topic is what is important for me to share with you. As I show you the numbers, you may be tempted to protest, hey buddy, you're going to keep the update short? Is that because the total for week 27 is an embarrassment? Well, yes and no. It's correct to say that week 27 was the lowest word count week of any so far in this process, and I was pretty bummed about that. I'll explain a little bit more later in the video, but yeah, the big takeaway is that despite hitting the ground running and energized and excited for the second half of this project and hitting the 20,000 word weekly target in week 26, I did have a little bit of a reality check in week 27. How did the bubbling enthusiasm, and yes, even though I'm mostly stoic, a mostly stoic sort of guy, I do sometimes bubble over with enthusiasm in my own quiet and reserved way. But how did that enthusiasm so quickly turn to a week with a word count 30% lower than my desired target and a full 57% less than my highest word count week so far? Well, let's get into it. As 2022 was coming to a close and 2023 was starting, I had a clear intention for how to proceed. I had learned a lot about my creative life in the first half of the Million Words Project, and it was time to take that knowledge and put it into action. Ideally, I was going to follow this plan: pause, reassess, reset, and then attack the second half with gusto. I actually did a good job of unplugging, and during that hiatus week, or 2 weeks of hiatus, which was the pause portion of the plan, I gave myself the space internally and externally to reassess my intentions for moving forward. And I reset my expectations for myself and the parameters of my weekly distribution of words. I developed a vision for the balance and priorities of the second half of the project. When the first week of January came, I used that time to ease back into the structure of the Million Words Project. I had set a goal of writing 5,000 words each week in 4 specific categories. I added a new category to the pie chart specifically labeled nonfiction books. That category, along with fiction, my life document work, and my weekly journal, those sections together were supposed to be more equally distributed in the new year. This new ideal distribution target would empower me to chip away every single week at the big picture goals I had set for myself for 2023. I was focusing in on the actual goals much more carefully within the larger landscape of this Million Word Challenge. And that first week, I attacked the work and did pretty well. I didn't write any new words in the new category of nonfiction books because I was still figuring out which of the nonfiction books I wanted to work on and gathering some more resources. See, I have about a dozen nonfiction books I hope to write over the next several years. So there was some legitimate work to do, discerning and deciding how to proceed. But here's where the whole process hit a speed bump. You see, I was planning the second half of the Million Words Project based on the parameters of my life and what I was expecting for the new year. This is a pretty common way to plan. You can expect there will be unexpected things, right? Surprises in the future, but you can't anticipate what those surprises will be or how they will impact the day-to-day administration of daily life. But the unexpected surprises can upend all of that. Just as I was ready to fully launch the new initiatives and refine my focus for the second half of the project, I found out some exciting information. My personal life was suddenly and significantly being reimagined. Don't worry, the changes were positive ones, but the timing of some life events were being accelerated by several months, and that required a whole new perspective about the balance between work, family, and creativity. And even though it was good news and happy changes to my circumstance, it was enough to scuttle the newly planned path forward. And this new reality meant there were additional time constraints on my daily schedule immediately. One of the biggest repercussions of all this change was that instead of contemplating a move later in the year, which had been the original plan, we were now looking to move sooner than later. That meant making time to look for houses, tour houses, talk about the pros and cons of certain houses, and all the things involved in house hunting. The market in this area is still pretty hot in the northern Kentucky and greater Cincinnati region, so we had to be ready to act quickly. There were a number of potential homes that were gone if we waited a day or two to look at them. In fact, in northern Kentucky, where we were living and had planned to stay, we were not finding anything that met our needs. That required us to shift our focus and expand across the river into various parts of Cincinnati. All of this is why I had to pause video production for a few weeks. If you remember, I was having trouble meeting the weekly word targets, and I had no extra time for creating these videos. As I'm filming this update, we have a new home and we are getting settled in. You may notice the old basement set is a thing of the past, and I'm going to be setting up a new space for making videos. There's even the possibility of going back to something like the pre-move productivity, at least until the next unexpected thing pops up. I'm much further along in the real world of the Million Words Project than I am in these videos. About 10 weeks ahead of these videos, actually, maybe a little bit more. So I'll give you a preview. There's a lot of ups and downs ahead and a lot of adjustments still to be made. It's kind of a wild ride, but for now, I'm hopeful that I have a little more margin, so I'm going to try to keep the updates coming. Brazilian author Paulo Coelho said, "The great victory, which appears so simple today, was the result of a series of small victories that went unnoticed. I'm not trying to predict any great victories for myself or anyone else, but I know that this grand quote speaks to me on a more humble level. The main thing this march toward 1 million words has taught me is that the big win of writing 1 million words is really a series of little wins. Every single time I sit down and actually write and put any number of words on the board, I'm living in one of those small victories that lead on to something larger. This isn't a new idea or even a concept I didn't already subscribe to, but every day, every week, every new video is a reminder of this reality. Little steps lead to big results, even when the little steps are smaller than you expected of yourself or of your circumstances. I had taken a much-needed hiatus to rest and reassess my intentions for moving forward. I had reset myself and my expectations and was starting to follow the new game plan when, kaboom, everything changed. Not only did my productivity take a hit, 20,000 words dipped to less than 14,000 words, but the sustainability of the new plan was in question. Any long-term plan requires you to pivot and adjust. And if you've watched these videos from week 1, you know I've been doing that to some degree all along. And I was prepared to do so once again. This new reality, though, meant there would be some casualties. Some of the things just had to go, at least temporarily. The biggest casualty was making these videos. As my time was constrained, I realized the 6 or so hours a week I spent producing a video had to be sacrificed. I just didn't have the time. And even with that sacrifice, there were still going to be weeks where I struggled to maintain the minimum pace of 20,000 words. I had to loosen my grip on the entire million words project. Don't get me wrong, I am not abandoning the push toward 1 million new words in 12 months. But going forward, there will be a lot more of the ups and downs in the word count column as I adjust yet again to the unexpected. Each new episode, I like to wind down with a thought or two for you to consider, which you can apply to your own creative, entrepreneurial, or big thing life goal. It's important to keep focus on the things that have meaning and purpose in our lives. This week, I'm going to ask a question aimed specifically at any of you out there who have gotten so derailed by the various surprises in life that you feel lost. You may realize there is something missing, something you feel like you could be doing, but aren't. This point to ponder is asking you to dig deeper into your past than I usually do. But I'd like you to consider the broad timeline of your life's story and ask yourself, was there ever anything I felt a deep desire to do that I had to abandon due to life circumstances? Was there anything I thought I would get to someday, but I haven't yet? Is there anything I thought I would set aside temporarily out of necessity that still gnaws at me all these years later? If the answer is yes, I want you to think of one thing you can do this week to achieve a small victory, as the earlier quote said. And if you do that, I would love to hear about it. That's all for now. Thank you for stopping by and joining me on this unpredictable journey. It's always great to hear from you, so leave a comment or hit the like button, or you can find links in the show notes to connect with me on social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, or at my website. If you know someone who might benefit from this video series, send them a link or tell them to search for the Million Words Project in quotes in Google. They'll find me there. Until next time, I hope you roll with the changes that life is likely throwing at you, and that you'll remember your words matter. Make them count.